Good evening, visitors. Welcome to the Australian War Memorial's last post ceremony. My name is Troy Clayton, and joining us today from the Royal Australian Air Force is Wing Commander Nicole Humphrey. Today we commemorate the 108th anniversary of the Battle of Hamel. In the early morning of the 4th of July, 1918, 3 Australian infantry brigades, along with a British tank brigade and supporting artillery fire, captured the village of Hamel in northern France. To give combat experience to the newly arrived American Expeditionary Force, companies from US Army battalions were included in the assault. The date for the attack, American Independence Day, was chosen to mark the first time American doughboys joined Australian diggers in the battle. Lieutenant General Sir John Monash, Commander of the Australian Corps, planned the assault meticulously, estimating it would take 90 minutes to capture the key objectives. In fact, it took 93 minutes, a stunning success at a cost of minimal casualties, which has been called a turning point of the First World War on the Western Front. While small in scale, Monash's coordinated use of tanks, artillery, infantry and aircraft at Hamel provided a model for later offensives which overwhelmed the German frontline defences and led to the Allied victory in November 1918. Today we remember the first Battle of Hamel. We pay our respects to the men and women commemorated here on the Roll of Honour and to the survivors who returned home. 2026 marks 125 years of dedicated service by the Australian Army and its predecessors. Today we remember and pay tribute to Second Lieutenant Horace Edgar Blee. This evening we warmly welcome, representing the Return in Services League of Australia, ACT branch, Mr Patrick Delgaitis. Representing the 2nd 16th Battalion Association, Mrs Gail Hayden, and representing the 16th Battalion Foundation, Mr Ian Hayden. We welcome the veterans who have served, those that are still serving, and the families that love and support them. The live stream of this ceremony is made possible by the Return in Services League of Australia and the RSL and Services Clubs Association. We welcome members who are watching the broadcast of this ceremony across Australia. During this evening's ceremony, wreaths will be laid at the base of the Pool of Reflection by visitors to the memorial. If you're able, please stand and join in singing the National Anthem. Thank you. If you're able, you may be seated. The Australian War Memorial was the vision of Charles Bean, Australia's First World War official historian. Bean landed with the Australian troops on Gallipoli and stayed with them at the front through to the end of the war. The idea of this national memorial and museum came to him at Pozières, France, in the depths of the bloody fighting of 1916. Bean's idea was that this would be a place where families and friends could mourn their loved ones buried in faraway places. It would also be a place that could help all Australians understand what these men and women had endured and what they had done for us. Bean's vision, to which we remain true, is best expressed as inscribed in the entrance to the memorial's galleries. Here is their spirit, in the heart of the land they loved, and here we guard the record which they themselves made. Tonight, we'll read the story behind just one of those on the Roll of Honour, which lists the names of more than 103,000 men and women who have given their lives for us in war and on operations for more than a century. But first we present a lament, Flowers of the Forest. Wreaths or floral tributes will now be laid at the base of the Pool of Reflection.
Today we remember and pay tribute to Second Lieutenant Horace Edgar Blee. Horace Blee was born on the 5th of September 1892 in Marylands, South Australia. He was the eldest of 4 children born to Thomas Blee, a gardener, and his wife Amelia. Horace went to Wellington Road Public School in North Norwood before training as an accountant. He then began working as an associate at the Society of Accountants. When the First World War broke out in 1914, Horace was working as a clerk in the Fruit Growers Cooperative Society in St Peters. Horace Blee enlisted in the Australian Imperial Force, the AIF, on the 30th of July 1915 in Keswick, South Australia. He was assigned to the 11th Reinforcement of the 16th Infantry Battalion with the rank of private and began training in Australia. At the end of October, he embarked for active service from Adelaide on the troop ship Benalla. In Egypt, he was taken on the strength of his battalion and continued training with them until June 1916, when they embarked for France. At the border of France and Belgium, the new troops were introduced to trench warfare and had their first experiences of combat. In August, the 16th Battalion was drawn into the costly fighting around Pozières in the Somme Valley. They rotated in and out of the front lines, enduring regular barrages and counterattacks before being transferred to Belgium in October. Blee had been recently promoted to corporal and trained around the Ypres Salient until December, when his battalion was sent back to France. As a cold winter began to set in, Blee was sent to hospital with mumps. In early 1917, Blee rejoined his battalion in the front lines. He was made company quartermaster sergeant in February, just as German forces began making a strategic withdrawal to the Hindenburg Line. This withdrawal eventually halted near the village of Bullecourt, and Blee and his comrades were again drawn into the fighting to recapture it. The first attack took place on the 11th of April, and was an absolute disaster for the Allied forces, who suffered some 3,000 casualties in the process. Blee and the remainder of his unit were withdrawn for rest behind the lines before taking up positions in Belgium. There, the 16th Battalion took part in attacks on Messines Ridge, Polygon Wood, and Passendale. before settling in for another cold winter in the trenches. Blee was later awarded a mention in dispatches for gallant service and devotion to duty during his unit's operations in 1917, before being selected for officer cadet training in England. In December 1917, Blee travelled for training to Cambridge, where he joined the No. 2 Officers Cadet Battalion. In June of 1918, he earned a commission in the AIF. He returned to his unit later that month as a second lieutenant. This came amidst a major enemy offensive with several strong attacks along the Allied front. The 16th Battalion was drawn into an operation near the town of Hamel on the 4th of July, 1918. It was hoped that the town's capture would provide them with an important foothold around the Somme area. When the operation began, the Allied forces threw everything at the enemy, using a combination of infantry, artillery, and air force to overwhelm the enemy forces. Within 93 minutes, all objectives had been attained, along with the capture of thousands of enemy troops and weapons. This success, however, had cost Allied forces more than 1,000 casualties. Tragically, among the dead was Second Lieutenant Horace Blee. One of his men recalled, "After the attack was over and we'd taken our objective, Blee was on the furthest advanced part. I saw him with a bomb in his hand, going along quite unconcerned, when he was hit in the head by a machine gun bullet. When we went to fetch him, we found he had already been taken back to battalion headquarters." Though Blee was quickly conveyed for medical attention, nothing could be done to save his life. His men buried him near the company headquarters in the presence of a padre. Today, Blee lies at Dawar Communal Cemetery Extension, beneath the description chosen by his family. It reads, "Dearly loved, sadly missed, Mother." Second Lieutenant Blee's name is listed on the roll of honour on my right, amongst almost 62,000 Australians who died while serving in the First World War. His photograph is displayed today beside the pool of reflection. This is but one of many stories of service and sacrifice told here at the Australian War Memorial. We now remember Second Lieutenant Horace Edgar Blee, who gave his life for us, for our freedoms, and in the hope of a better world.
If able, please stand for the reading of the Ode and the sounding of the last post.
They shall grow not old, as we who are left grow old. Age shall not weary them, nor the years condemn. At the going down of the sun and in the morning, we will remember them.
We'll remember them. lest we forget. We leave you this evening with the words of the memorial's founder, Charles Bean. Many a man lying out there at Pozières or in the low scrub of Gallipoli, with his poor, tired senses barely working through the fever of his brain, has thought in his last moments, well, it's over. But in Australia, they will be proud of this. Ladies and gentlemen, girls and boys, that concludes the last post ceremony. On behalf of the director, staff and volunteers, thank you for visiting the Australian War Memorial today. We wish you all a very pleasant evening. Thank you.